What's going on, guys? Justin Fuller, ex-Honda salesman, tech lover, and today your host, and we are reviewing the 2026 Honda Civic LX, your base model, $25,745. Is it worth the money? And how does it stack up against other makes and models? Let's check it out. Guys, so let's talk about what's underneath the hood of the 2026 Honda Civic LX. So let me pull you on in here. You are looking at a 2-liter engine that is running to a CVT transmission and then out to front-wheel drive. This is putting out 150 horsepower. Now, a couple things to keep in mind when we're talking about the Civic and specifically the engine. In the LX and the model right above this, the Sport, it is the exact same engine, same transmission, same horsepower. Now, above the Sport, there's a Sport Hybrid. Now, when you get to that hybrid model, you're then looking at an engine that puts out 200 horsepower. So an additional 50 horsepower in the hybrid models. There are a couple up, just something to keep in mind. But while we're here, I want to throw something up on the screen so you can see how does the 150 horsepower in this vehicle stack up against other makes and models out in the world. I want to say the Mazda squeaks just out with about 5 extra horsepower. So while we're down here on the ground, I wanted to show you two things. First, I wanted to give you an opportunity to see what the LX entry-level wheel looks like. Not a whole lot to talk about. It's a 16-inch wheel that kind of flimsy looking. I'm not a huge fan. It kind of pushes you to move into a sport model, which is a much nicer look. Now, while we're down here though, I want to talk to you about MPGs. This vehicle gets 32 in the city and 41 on the highway. I'm not mad at that. That is nice, especially with the cost of gas these days. If you wanted to up that up even further, you could jump into one of the Civic hybrid models, which gets 50 in the city and 47 on the highway. So just something to keep in mind if this is going to be a commuter car for you. But while we're here, I want to throw up a comparison so you can see how the MPGs on this car, the 32 in the city and 41, stack up against other makes and models out there in the world. All right, guys, so let's talk about front row leg space. In the front of this vehicle, you've got 42.3 inches of leg space. It's actually pretty usable. I'm going to show you here in a second. Just as a reminder, it's the exact same as the Honda Accord. So even if you jumped up to its big brother, wouldn't necessarily get you any extra space in the front of the vehicle. But let's check this thing out. I've got the seat all the way back. I'm 6 foot 250. If I hop on in this guy, I have got plenty of space to work with up here. So understand, if you're a bigger guy like I am, you could easily fit inside of this vehicle. While we're here though, I want to throw a comparison up on the screen so you can see how does the 42.3 inches in this vehicle stack up against other makes and models out there in the world. I want to say the Subaru Impreza took this one with 42.9, so squeaking out a little bit more than a half an inch. All right, guys, so let's talk about the second row of the Honda Civic. So in the back of this thing, you've got 37.4 inches of leg space. I have the seat pushed all the way back since I was just in the front to see what this looks like. So let me show you what it looks like when I get in. So as once again, a 6 foot 250 pound man, seat all the way back, I can fit behind myself. So if you're concerned about a bigger driver and then whoever's behind them, not something to worry about. Now, a couple things to consider. You could move into the Honda Accord and get, I want to say, roughly 40.6 inches of leg space. So if you're looking for about 2-3 more inches, that would be available to you. But while we're here, I want to throw up the comparison and see how does the 37.4 in this car stack up against other makes and models out in the world. I want to say you can move to the Elantra and get roughly 38, so about a half inch. I think you'll see in a lot of comparisons, it's a tight race when it comes to this particular type of model. Now, while we're back here, there are a couple things I want to point out in the second row. Of course, you have a black cloth interior. You don't have a flip down in this model, and this is a full fold down. It's not a 60-40 split. And then as you move up here, you'll see there's air vents in the front, but there is no USBs or air vents in the second row of this vehicle. So let's talk about cargo space in the back of the vehicle, right? So I've got my key here. The first thing that I learned on here is there's a button to pop the trunk. There's not actually a button to reach under here and touch. So you're gonna have to do it off the fob. Something kind of weird. Don't know why they did that. Could have added a button to make it a little bit easier, but just something to note. While you're in here, you've got 14.8 cubic feet of cargo space. While we're back here, I'll point out the car does come with carpeted floor mats. Not every model does when it comes to other makes and models, so understand that. In here, underneath, you've got your spare, your jack, and your accessories. You can see that full fold flip down that you got right there as well. All right, guys, so there's a couple things I want to do here. First, I want to let you know, 14.8 cubic feet in here is very usable. If you're an active person, you had some bags, maybe you're going to the airport, something like that, you can easily fit what you need into. So just understand that. But if you wanted to go from maybe the Civic up to the Accord, 14.8 up to 16.7, so a couple more cubic feet, just something to keep in mind. Not dramatically more, but it is more. but I want to throw something up on the screen so you can see how does the 14.8 in this vehicle stack up against other makes and models out there in the world. I want to say the Subaru Impreza snuck this one out with roughly 20.8 cubic feet. Now, if you're like me, 14.8 cubic feet or 16.7 doesn't really mean much, right? You're kind of like, okay, what does that mean? So I thought I'd show you. I can fit in the back of this thing easily. So if you're talking about space, you've got a good amount of space for a 6 foot, 250 pound man to fit in the back of this sucker. All right, guys, so when I sold Hondas, this is arguably one of the things I felt like people struggle with the most when they're shopping for a new vehicle, and that's understanding trim levels. Now, Honda's a little bit nicer than some of the other makes and models out there in the world. They keep it a little bit cleaner as far as, you know, the way they package these things together. So we're in the LX model right now. That is your base model. Above that, there's a Sport. Above the Sport, there's a Sport Hybrid, and then above the Sport Hybrid, there is a Sport Touring Hybrid. So there are 4 models, right, for the Honda Civic for 2026. So what I want to do for you is go over a couple things. One, if I'm in the LX and I'm saying, hey, what if I went up to the next model? How much extra money would that cost me? But 2, what is the extra items that I would get by moving from the LX up to the Sport model? So I'm gonna throw that up on the screen so you can understand, hey, this is what it looks like, this is what I'd spend. Now, the next jump I wanna show you after that is if I went from the LX and said, hey, I really want the MPGs. I'm gonna skip over the Sport, I wanna go to that Sport Hybrid, right? So you're gonna make essentially 2 jumps. So if I'm going from the LX up to the Sport Hybrid, how much extra money is that gonna cost me? But what additional items am I gonna get, right? Because it's gonna be all those Sport items plus what else? So go ahead and take a look at that. I just want you to understand this in case you're shopping this vehicle and you're like, if I want to go from this trim to that trim, kind of what do I gain, what do I lose, that sort of deal. All right, guys, so I'm back on the ground again, but of course for a couple different reasons. See what the front end of this vehicle looks like. I think when everybody looks at a car, you kind of try to figure out, is it smiling, is it grimacing? Like, what does the character of the front end of the vehicle get? Leave a comment, let me know what you think. But while we're here, I want to talk to you about ground clearance. Depending on where you live in the country, what kind of roads you're on, that may matter to you. You've got 6.2 inches of ground clearance to work with on this vehicle. Now, if you were looking at a Honda Accord, it actually drops down to 5.3, so just something to keep in mind if you're looking at this car versus its big brother. But while we're here, I want to throw something up on the screen so you can see how does this car stack up against other makes and models out in the world. I want to say the Honda Civic wins this category. So let's take a second to talk about safety when it comes to the Honda Civic, right? Now you've got your normal things like LED daytime running lights, and you've got 2 front, 2 side, 2 full curtain, 2 rear, and 2 knee airbags in the vehicle. Things that you kind of come to expect in a vehicle. But let's talk about some of those other active features that you can turn on and off and take advantage of. So let's talk about some of the safety support features. So I've gone through the menu here and scrolled to them, and I'm going to go ahead and select them. Now let's talk about what these features are. So the first one you've got is road departure mitigation. What that feature is the car is using a camera up by where the rear view mirror is to detect the lines on the road. If you start to drift off the side of the road, the car can actually give you an audible alert and vibrate the wheel to say, hey, wake up, pay attention, you're drifting off the road. You can turn this feature, of course, on and off. Now, the next one is collision mitigation braking system. What this is using is a radar that's down in the grille to bounce it off cars in front of you. So if a car in front of you started to slow way down and if you were coming up on it and it's bouncing that radar off and it's looking like you may rear end them, first it can give you an audible alert, then it can flash in the dash, and then actually apply the brakes to help prevent the accident. Now, the next 2 features are controlled off the right side of the steering wheel. The first one is going to be your adaptive cruise control. So when you get up to the speed you want, you're going to set your speed, right? And the same indicator will come on up in the dash. From there, you can then press this button. When you press this, you're going to see boxes appear from the dash. The more boxes you see, the more distance it'll keep between you and the car in front of you. So what that means is if we're driving down the road, it's using that same radar to bounce it off in front of cars in front of me. If a car slows down from 70 down to 55, it'll keep the designated space that I pick and slow the vehicle down. Then when I get out and around them, it'll take me back up to my speed. So you don't have to turn your cruise control on and off and on and off. This is kind of like collision mitigation braking, but being used for cruise control. Now, the next feature is lane keep assist. That's this button right here. When you press this button, you're gonna see that same indicator come on up there in the dash. What this is using is a camera up by that rearview mirror that we talked about earlier to detect the lines on the road. So let's pretend I'm in the middle lane of a highway. If I started to drift to the left or the right out of my lane, it can actually correct for me and pull me back into my lane. So if you've ever been in a car that feels like it pulls a little bit to the left or the right, that's the feeling that it gets. You could overpower it in the event of an emergency, but it's just designed to make sure you don't drift into another lane because you're distracted and hit a car. All right, guys, so let's take a second to talk about touchscreens. Inside of the LX model, you're going to get a 7-inch touchscreen. This is going to live in all the models with the exception of the very top-end model, that's Sport Touring, which offers a 9-inch touchscreen. So I just want you to understand that. Now, while we're here, I want to do two things. I want to throw up a comparison so you can see how this stacks up against other makes and models out there in the world. I want to see if you go to the Mazda 3, they offer an 8.8-inch touchscreen, so, you'll get yourself an inch or so, a little bit bigger. Now, you could move into the Accord, which, depending on the trim level you pick, offers a 12.3-inch touchscreen, so considerably bigger. So just something to keep in mind in case you're shopping Accords and Civics. So really quickly, I just want to touch on speaker systems because I want you to understand, depending on the trim level of the vehicle you pick, will determine the amount of speakers and wattage that you get out of them. So there's a 160-watt speaker 4 system, which is what you'll find in the base model. When you get to those mid models, 180-watt 8-speaker system. If you go that very top-end touring model, a 300-watt 12-speaker Bose system. So understand there is some differences depending on the trim level. Now, I've typically found that Civic drivers are usually pretty tech-savvy people, so I wanted to show you something here. You might notice that this isn't the typical look that you would see when it comes to the display and the programming that you would find here. You'll also notice that I've got some apps like YouTube TV, the Play Store. I've got things like Spotify with the full version, Facebook, Prime Video. I can hop into Netflix and all these different things. You may be going, how are you doing that? What's allowing you to take advantage of this? And I want to talk to you about that for a second. What I'm using is a box. So this isn't something specifically that comes with Honda, but it's something I think is really cool. It is this box right here. So what this box is the CPC 200 T-Box by CarLink Kit. So here's the box so you can get an idea. I'm gonna flip it over on the back so you can see some of the details. This thing's super cool. Essentially what it does is it turns your head unit into a tablet. So I'm using the hotspot on my phone to allow it to access that data so that it then can use the box to go download any app that it wants. So this way, if I was taking a long road trip and I wanted to watch the new season of Sandman, I absolutely could. The other piece to this that I really like is that of course you can download all your streaming apps, right? That's always something nice if you're sitting there waiting for someone, or if you're taking a long trip and you want to be able to listen to some stand-up comedy or something like that. But additionally, what I really like about this is when you go into apps like Spotify, it gives you the full version of it. One, I don't have to use the voice command if I'm driving. I could actually type it in or have my passenger type it in. The second part that I really like to this is when you jump into an artist, it gives you everything. It's not kind of a limited version that you sometimes get with Apple CarPlay and Android. So I get their the top songs, I get the artist picks, I get the popular releases. I mean, you get everything, right? So you get the full versions. So imagine if you were opening up an app on your phone or on your laptop. That's the version you're getting, not the kind of what I'd say cut up version you get in Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It's kind of limited. So for that sake, I really like this box. If it's something you're interested in, I'll throw a link down in the description. Of course, I have a coupon code. I'm one of their affiliates to help you save a couple bucks. Super cool box. I've reviewed actually a handful of them by this company. They typically do really well. Hence, that's why I talk about them. So I guess the $25,745 MSRP question is this Honda Civic worth it? I would say yes and no. And what I mean by that is, owning a Civic is a great vehicle to own. They're safe, they're reliable, they have great safety features, they've got a pretty decent tech setup, even in the base model, which we're in, and you can jump up trims and get a lot more. But what I like about it is that, one, it's got good resale value. They're known for being reliable and safe, and if you're gonna put your kid or somebody into it later in life, it's kind of a nice car to have. And the other part to that is, of course, if you want to do anything to these vehicles aftermarket-wise, there are so many options, so many available, accessories and different things you can do, much like the box that I spoke about. There's all these different things that exist out there in the ecosystem for the Honda Civic, and for that reason, I really like it, because when you get into other makes and models, you don't always get that. So if you're considering one, I highly encourage you to check out the Honda Civic. Of course, check out some of my other videos if you want to learn about the Civic Hybrid. I've done some different reviews, or any other Hondas, right? Accords, HRVs, the Ridgeline, the Odyssey, whatever the case would be. So a couple things to ask you for favors. I hope you like, comment, of course, subscribe, and share the video. If you got some friends searching, I hope you'll share this video so they can check it out.